Welcome back, everybody, to The Garage. We are on week 6. I'm Josiah.
And I'm James.
And this is The Garage.
All right, man. Ask the question.
The question is, what should be the goal for humanity?
Well, first, let's define humanity. Humanity is all human beings collectively, the human race as a whole.
Is that the definition?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, tell me, what do you mean by goal?
I mean, if we're looking at what the goal should be for us as a species, as a people, I guess it depends, man. World peace?
World peace? You think that's the goal of humanity?
I think it would be probably a good start.
Okay.
I would probably say that's a very good end goal.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I just wanted to hear your thoughts first before I told you mine, right? So, my thoughts on the human race and the goal of the human race is the longevity of the human race.
Our species, yeah.
Of our species and the expansion of the human race without killing ourselves. Because right now we're killing ourselves and we're hurting the planet in ways that we cannot even imagine. Agree or disagree?
Well, what do you mean? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, of course. So as of right now, there are forests on fire. There are earthquakes, volcanoes happening all of 2020, the coronavirus, a lot of things are happening to the human race right now. And don't even forget about the global warming part.
If it's real. If global warming
if it's real, sure. I know that when I lived over in states that had snow, they no longer have as much snow. So we can tell that the temperature is steadily increasing.
How do we know that's just another rotation of the planet around the sun?
Because it's changing. So if one year there's like 10 inches of snow and then the next year it has like 8 and so forth and so forth.
I wouldn't consider that a determining factor. Simply because if you look back however many billions of years ago, the Sahara Desert was once a rainforest.
Okay.
It was an extreme climate change that literally changed everything about it.
Honestly, I'd probably have to agree with you on that
and then,
one. But
not only that, but Grand Canyon is another example. It used to be full of water.
So what do you think changed though, before we get into the main topic?
I think the reason that the theory for global warming was initially created, and I'm not saying in my personal opinion, this is what I think when people think that global warming is fake, right? I think that it was probably created for a publicity thing. So a certain political party would be able to use it as leverage, as saying, hey, I want to fix this issue because it's a major issue. The same thing with coronavirus they're doing right now. Coronavirus is not even a fragment of a threat. In all reality, it's about 5% lethality rate for people over 70 and like 1% for people under 70. The statistics show that the threat for COVID is very, very low, substantially low. You have more of a chance of getting the flu and dying than coronavirus. Before we get too far into the rabbit hole, right? I don't think that global warming is actually a huge threat.
Okay. Agree to disagree. Because that's not the main topic right now. So
Yeah.
we're going to talk about the goal of humanity. So I know that humanity itself right now is slowly, we're eventually going to kill ourselves.
Can you elaborate on killing ourselves?
Yeah, I think there's I'm not necessarily just talking about, oh, we're going to go out there in war and just like kill each other, but I'm talking about development. And it goes back to a couple of episodes we've talked about before, and I'm not necessarily talking about the decline. All right, let me rephrase that. So based off of our other episodes, we ourselves are becoming more dependent on technology, and technology, even though it'll help us in the future, but we're going to be so dependent on it, I think we're going to eventually lose ourselves. We're going to lose the values and what human beings should probably do to maintain our longevity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, are you talking about kind of like WALL-E? Like in the movie WALL-E?
Yeah, I suppose a little bit like WALL-E because, well, if you kind of think about it, we're kind of damaging our own environment in ways that should be addressed, but not as popularized in today's time. We're polluting our own environment, and I know there are programs out there that are cleaning it up, but we're making more of a mess than we are cleaning it. Right. Does that make sense? So the issue here is addressing these, getting everybody on the same page, and then everybody collectively as a whole doing something about it. But the hard part is getting people to not think about this generation right now, but to think about future generations. People ask me, yo, James, what do you recycle, man? Just throw it in the trash. And I tell them, like, it's not necessarily going to affect my lifetime, but it's going to affect other people's lifetime. And it totally makes sense. It's just a habit that I've done, and they're right, though. It's not going to affect me in this lifetime, but the habit that I've learned how to recycle over time just kind of will carry on, and then it'll help future generations. Now, if everybody as a whole did this, then we would definitely help the world in that one issue.
Yeah. No, I see where you're going. Kind of dialing back to the main topic, which is what should the goal of humanity be?
Mm-hmm.
I think the simple answer, and we'll dive into it, is definitely going to be prolonging our existence.
Yes.
I think if we're talking philosophically, there was, and I'm going to reference this, there was a Greek philosopher, Aristotle, where he was saying, well, how do we achieve that? Or the council was asking him, like, how do we achieve that? And I think I've said this before in another episode, right? Where we're talking about mass genocide, and he was like, we have to kill everybody under the age, or over the age. I think it was 7.
You say over or under?
Over.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so everyone over the age of 7 has to die. Because in order for everyone to get on the quote-unquote same page, right, there's just... I think it's impossible, dude. I just genuinely, think that's impossible. I think we've had, since the beginning of humanity, to do that, right? And even, if you think back to the Indians before we all, Christopher Columbus came over and we, inhabited the land, I don't know if they had thought that they were the only people in the world, but there was inter-tribal war. It was against its own people. You know what I mean? And you see that throughout all of humanity, not just the Indians, but you look at different cultures, different continents, and inter-species war, regardless of anything, we're really warmongers. In all reality, we always want to have the advantage. We always want to have power. We always want to have control. And so I think the idea of world peace is so far out of the question that I just don't think it'll happen. But Aristotle did make a good point when he was talking about the whole genocide thing. And again, I said it before, not promoting genocide. I don't think that they should do that. I think that'd be extremely morally incorrect. But his philosophy on it was that you would train, there would be a few elders left behind to teach, okay, this is going to be the most effective route, so this is what we're going to do. And everyone would just kind of learn the roles, kind of like the movie The Giver. So I think ultimately, that's kind of what would have to happen. You know what I mean?
I agree, and I also disagree, and I'll tell you what. Now, what was his name again?
Aristotle,
right? Aristotle may have made a good idea, but over time, I think it will eventually revert back to the way it was before. Because even in, say, The Giver, right? The Giver, they were all controlled in a way. But eventually, that one kid, right? He broke free from it. Because then he started thinking outside the box.
execute him.
So you said you would kill him?
Yeah, well, I mean, if we're living in a world based off that, then yes.
Okay.
Absolutely, because then that's the threat to humanity at that point.
So I see what you're talking about, but at that point we're essentially being robots. And I could see if we're trying to expand specifically just the human race, then sure, right?
I mean, are we robots though? We would still have consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
We would our consciousness would be wired to believe that this is just how it works.
Okay.
And that's why he said kill everyone over the age of 7. Because then there would be no room to question. There wouldn't be, in the few that did, you know what I'm saying? Get rid of them.
I could kind of agree, right? And I'll throw an analogy out there in a bit. So say the population grows to the point where it's back to the way it was. You kill everybody off, and say the population's I don't know, 500 million, right? Instead of the 7 point whatever billion people.
7.07 billion people is the world's population.
Whatever it is.
Something crazy. Lots of people.
Yeah. Anyways, say we start with 500,000 people, and they're all kids. But there's a few adults that control or teach these individual kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And over time, once the population grows back to the way it was again, I think somebody's going to eventually question that structure of reality, right? The society, they're gonna question it, because don't people already question society as well in their own culture?
Yeah, I mean, people definitely question the culture already, but again, that's not going under the assumption that we were born and raised not to question it. I mean, you have to think about other societies that have already come before us, right? Where there wasn't a whole lot of question in that culture. I always think about the Spartans and how they used to throw babies off like fucking cliffs, and it wasn't a question within their culture. That's just what they did. You know what I mean? And no one questioned it until they were beat out by the place. I don't remember which place it was. They got eradicated though.
Yeah.
Right. And then even more recently, think about Germany, right, and the Holocaust, right. I'm sure there were people that were questioning it within the inside, but it wasn't enough of an influence to, within their own ranks, kind of change it. I mean, to our knowledge, there are definitely speculations that Hitler's men killed him, but nothing is proven. So, there are plenty of societies and cultures where there are things that are completely allowed. Again, Middle East, right? Like how they go to their day to day. That's not questioned within their cultures. That's something they do. So if you took the entire world's population, got rid of everyone over the age of 7, left X amount of people left to teach the kids growing up kind of, okay, this is what is going to happen. This is what happens, X, Y, and Z. And then I don't really see any holes in that theory. I think that they would just grow up and think, okay, this is what we do. This is our society. And this is how we keep it running.
So kind of like a communist party. The idea kind of reminds me of communism, right? It looks good on paper, but it's bad in practice. But the one thing that's different is you wipe out everybody above the age of 7. So that way there's nobody else that challenges it.
I can see that. Okay, so we've established what the goal should be, right? Which is, at first it would have to be world peace, which is unattainable. But do we have any realistic ways of, because we're talking about things that we wish would happen, right? What are some steps that we could take to meet the goal? Which, if we can both agree on the premise of the goal being the continued existence, right? I think first we'd have to identify what the major threats are to humanity, if we're going to go under the premise that the goal is for the existence and continuation of humanity.
I think war is a big one.
War?
Say world peace, right? You talked about world peace, so let's try to get rid of war. I have a few ideas.
Okay, are we talking about... Okay, so catch me up then, because I'm kind of behind. You're saying that war is one of the major threats.
War and violence. No, I'm not saying like...
War, violence.
Yeah, war, violence, that type of thing, crime, right?
I disagree.
I'm not saying it's a big threat right now, right?
Okay.
But I'm saying
but
you talked about world peace, so you're saying, so let's talk about how to get rid of war, violence /
Okay, yeah, we can start with that.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
we'll start with that first, just so that way, if war continues or it continues to exist, it might even grow or whatever it is.
Yeah, I thought you were kind of going into that war could bring extinction through the human race, and I don't think that's possible.
Yeah, that'd be pretty hard.
That would essentially be like, okay, like let's say China wins and then you take over everything. They're not just going to kill themselves.
Well, I guess unless if everybody just nukes themselves.
Just mass suicide.
Massive nuke war.
Mass homicide, genocide. Just completely all right, well, everyone just agrees throughout the board. All the different countries are just like, well, you know what? We're never going to meet in the middle here, guys. So let's just end it all. Everyone just lets off their nukes in their area at the same exact time.
And then countries that don't have nukes survives.
Gosh, that is sadistic. That is really messed up, man.
Anyways, so nobody's going to completely, I'm not saying it's impossible, but nobody's going to immediately just nuke each other, nuke the whole world. But let's talk about the world peace. How would you try to achieve world peace?
That's a tough question, man. I guess we would all have to... First, we would have to have an understanding throughout all the world leaders, which was, and this is my hypothesis, right? Where we have an election, a democracy, and somehow get it to be fair, right? Where we bring together all the world leaders, right? And we can't use popular vote. We can't use a public vote. So I guess it's not really democracy. Because if we're going off that, then China would win because it has the largest population. That and Russia. You know what I mean? So we can't go off popular vote. So we would have to almost kind of elect like the electoral colleges, where we give each continent or each country a specific amount of votes. You know what I'm saying? And then we kind of have a vetting process to where we can somehow break it down. Have the world leaders. Maybe it's just the world leaders that can vote, right? And they all kind of do process of elimination until they're like, okay, this is the one we choose, right? Which I think, okay, crazy idea, real quick. I think one of the ways that we could actually get there, and hear me out, this is way far out there, extraterrestrial. Meaning like we get invaded by some like alien race, right? And then they're like, man, as standalone nations, there's no way possible we're going to come out on this thing on top. So I think honestly, that would be the only thing that could really
like Battle Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, where everyone just is like, well, if we don't work together, we're all kind of screwed anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the influence, and I think that kind of democracy or vetting process or whatever they would want to call it would be ideal for choosing a leader. Or we could just take all the world leaders, throw them in like a giant battle ring, and do like Hunger Games type stuff, and like the last winner wins.
Okay. Okay, so I see a couple of potential flaws with your electoral, your democracy type of world thing, right? The entire world democracy thing. So say two major countries, right? They have the same ideology. They have the same political views. They team up with each other, and then we somehow say China, right? China's pretty massive. So whoever pairs up with China or teams up with China and gets China to vote for them, or they vote for China, then China would probably win, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm saying so essentially, and what's not to say if say China wins, right? China wins, and China's supposed to be taking care of the entire world.
Oh, that would be outrage. There would definitely be outrage in the streets.
Yeah, not only that, but China would still only focus on their people. They would, you know what I'm saying?
Because, I don't know, man.
Because let's look at it like this, right? Even though there's got to be some bias even with the leaders and the people, because even though China wins and they're supposed to take care of the entire world, let's say, well, I know there's got to be some bias and there's got to be some favoritism, right? Because they're going to favor their people more often. So if they're running the economy of the world or whatever it is, they're probably they might, I'm not saying they will, but I'm saying it is possible that they'll focus more on themselves and their development compared to the rest of the world.
I mean, in all reality, I could see that. I definitely could see that as a potential. However, isn't that what every country really wants anyway, which is more territory? To own more? You know what I mean?
I don't think so. I mean, as of right now, you think the U.S. is trying to grow? I think we're really set on 50 states, 51 if we're including Puerto Rico, right? But regardless, you know what I mean. Like, the boundaries are pretty set right now, right?
Yeah.
The boundaries itself are pretty set. We're not necessarily trying to invade Mexico or Canada just to get more territory. We're good right now.
Well, we can't. I feel like okay, hear me out. I feel like if we could, probably would.
Yeah, but there's no need to.
No, I disagree.
Explain.
More territory means better economy. More territory means more population, means more power, means more control. The more territory you own, the better off you are. There are plenty of reasons why we don't invade Canada. In fact, there are contracts with Canada that say, hey, we're not going to mess you up, or hey, we're not going to war, or peace treaties. That's what peace treaties are. It's literally saying, hey, we won't come and try to take your stuff.
Yeah, but I'm sure those were established a long time ago.
It doesn't matter. The reason that they were put in place, obviously, was because there are plenty of reasons not to. I would say I'm just saying that if we could, we probably would. More territory means better off. I'm just saying, dude.
Okay.
So what I'm going there with that is that if China all of a sudden, right, were to run everything, right, then I think they would probably try to actually run it. You know what I mean? As if it was their own. Because technically the world would be China at that point. So, of course, they're going to come to the call. I mean, they're going to run it the way they want to run it. They're probably going to run it the same way they're running China. but I think it's going to be run the same.
Okay.
Because they own that now.
Call me naive if you want, but I think nowadays most countries nowadays, right? Most developed countries have no, I wouldn't say need, because I can see what you're talking about with the growth, but I don't think we would necessarily try to invade and go to war and kill innocent people just for the sake of money.
What about Iraq and oil?
Less developed countries, right? Those are less developed countries, and they may. You know what? I'll tell you this. I don't know much about it, but if we went to war in Iraq just for the oil, then that's pretty messed up. With
you want to know what it was? So what happened is we went over there and had an agreement with their government that said that we were allowed to come over there and get oil as long as we provide arms for their people. So we went there and we promised defense, like we promised to protect them as long as they allow us to use their oil, right? Go over there and mine for their oil. Well, what happened is we gave their civilians guns, and then they formulated the Taliban. And then they were like, you know what? We don't really want you in our country anymore. And then they told us to leave, and we were like, nah. And that was pretty much the story.
Listen, I don't know the history behind that, but I would definitely love to read your source. So
yeah, that was more or less what happened.
Okay, no, I can kind of see that, but I'm still gonna keep my mind open, right? Because maybe it's just my viewpoint on it. Because if I were a leader, I probably would not go and try to invade Mexico or Canada and kill them, right? Because, well, you initially said that the reason why we went to war with Iraq, right? Because we went over there, deals or treaties or whatever it was, and then we were over there just to take their oil, and then we were faced with conflict afterwards, and then that's how the war went off, right?
Yeah, but we didn't paint it that way. America didn't paint it that way.
Yeah, okay. Then that's what happens though. That if we're being technical and we're using the facts, and if what you said is the facts, then we went over there without the plan of trying to cause conflict. Right, so we didn't go over there planning on just mass murdering people just to take it.
Yeah, but okay.
But then I guess it ended up that way, right?
Okay, hold on. But the thing is with that, right, is that we painted it something different here in the States. We didn't say, hey, we went over there for oil, and they said, okay, you have your oil, now leave. Right? We don't need the defense anymore, so they broke the agreement, or whatever it actually was. We painted it as there's a terrorist organization killing U.S. troops, and now we need to go over there and kick their butt. And that's what was painted. And there's a reason for that. I definitely think the entire war in Iraq was totally our fault. The majority of it was probably our fault.
Lessons learned, if people choose to learn from it.
But that's the thing, right? We were talking about, because we're, a civilization now, where we don't go in and just invade other countries. That's definitely not correct at all. We look at North and South Korea. Those are two big countries. They were at war until Donald Trump actually stepped in, which, I'm not going too far out of the spectrum here, right? But kudos to him.
Yeah.
He essentially kind of went over there and made peace between two huge countries, and then they were at war for a long time.
I mean, to be fair, I don't think they were. I mean, I guess they were technically still at war because there wasn't an armistice, right?
Oh, dude, there was a huge war. There was a massive war.
Are you talking about right now?
The Korean War?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but then then there's that line, right?
Yeah,
I'm saying that line, and then they just haven't really done anything. They threaten each other, but they haven't really done much. And North Korea just shoots a bunch of missiles over the seas and stuff, right? Over ships.
Yeah, all I'm saying is that if there were Russian missiles fired over the United States, it would be a huge deal.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So I mean, and then we look at I think the Philippines is at war right now too.
Last I checked, they were fighting up against ISIS or something within one of their islands.
Right. So I mean, there's plenty of war going on in the world, plenty of it for totally stupid reasons too.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So I mean, I definitely wouldn't put it past humanity to just be okay, you know what I'm saying? I still think we're as dirty and savage as we've always been. I just think we've become more intellectually sound in it. I think that the majority of the wars now are just going to be cyber warfare, gathering intelligence and using it against our opponent.
Okay. I'll keep my mind open to it because maybe I won't personally, if I were in charge, I personally won't go to war with people because I think that's stupid and that's like immoral, because why would you go out there and try to kill other people for no reason?
Let me ask you this then. If it wasn't for personal gain and it was for the betterment of humanity, then would you do it?
And it all comes down to your objective.
Yeah.
So say for example, say if the US wanted to invade Canada because the US wanted to expand their economy or whatever they wanted to, I would not do it, right? But I'm glad you brought that up, because that was actually one of my ideas on bringing the world together, was eradicating people who were somewhat resistant, right? And let me tell you why. So your democracy idea was somewhat similar to my idea. I was going to say, how about nations who are already peaceful with each other? How about they make alliances, like worldwide alliances, right? They have their own small army, and say if one country steps out of line, we go keep them in check. Now, say if we're expanding and if we have this alliance, and if one country is extremely, what's the word called? What's this word? Not in compliance, right? Then we definitely should either keep them to this, we should probably just like not even trade with them, or just keep them sustainable, right? So that way they'll probably have to join us. So that way we can provide our resources and we continue trade and whatnot.
So kind of like flush them out?
Yeah, flush them out. Because at this point we're trying to make a world collective effort to change, right? Mm-hmm. And if they don't, then they can be excluded from the growth of humanity, right? They'll just be, in a way, excluded. That's what I was thinking. So, but you know what? If they want to be bad and they just want to go to war with us because we're trying to change the world for the better, I say just eradicate all of them. And then for the people and the people in that country that want to change with us, we'll have to try to take them out somehow. As in, like, I don't mean take them out as in like kill them. I mean take them out as in like move them to different countries as refugees, like refugees. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely see that. I mean, you just have to take into consideration if you're trying to flush them out, they're obviously going to know. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And they're probably going to go to war with you anyway. Because at that point, you're infringing on their ability to sustain or make progress.
Okay. So the first order of business is getting world peace in this goal towards humanity. And then after that, we can start discussing, because all the world leaders, I know they're smart enough. Okay, the majority of them are probably smart enough to understand that the world's going to end if they don't change the way we not only treat the environment, but how we treat each other as people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I see a few options here, right? Or potential things that are going to happen. Because one of the things that we're talking about is major threats to humanity now. Mm-hmm. So if we're talking about threats to humanity, I think that one of them is going to be disease. 2 could be technology advancing to the point where they decide they don't need us anymore. And those are the negatives. I think one of the things that could potentially make humanity come together, and this is a very obvious one, is evolution. I think once we evolve, I think the first thing that's going to go when we evolve is emotion. I think it'll be emotion that goes simply because if you look at any kind of war, any kind of issues that the world has with each other, I would say they're all, or majority, emotional based, or at least that's the propaganda that's pushed on the country in order for them to go fight. So I think the first thing that's going to go is the emotional aspect. I think that once we do evolve, I think Aristotle's theory will be, we won't have to do the mass genocide and kill everyone over the age of 7. I think that once we evolve, it'll be all completely logic and complete efficientness and effectiveness. And I think once we all understand that, once people are evolved, or once we evolve as a species, that we'll be able to have that understanding that, okay, in order for us to continue as a species, this is what needs to happen. And there won't be any emotion behind it. It'll just be, okay, this is what we need to do. This is what's going to get us through. Let's do that. You know what I mean? What do you think?
In a perfect world, that would be the case, but human beings are naturally just selfish. They want more in their life.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. I think the answer to that is evolution.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna be hard because like it's always been like that throughout since the beginning of time, right? Since like whenever humans were around.
Negative.
You don't think so?
No, I think that when, if we look at Homo sapiens, or not Homo sapiens, but what are the prehistoric era? What were they called?
I don't know.
The species, the last evolution before this evolution. You know the graph of like the ape, and then it slowly starts standing up and losing its hair and all that.
Yeah.
Those are different places in the evolutionary chain, right? So the one before this, I don't think that it was about war. It was about all this. I think we developed a level of cognition that triggered that, and I think that's when we started making those selfish decisions and making those like this is what we have to do. But that's what I'm saying. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be anytime soon. I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. But I think eventually that will happen.
Yeah.
And that could be a few generations or a few evolutions from ourselves. You know what I mean? I think if we look at the Myers-Briggs test, the majority of people in the world are emotional types, right? And I think the first evolution is going to be the majority of those are going to phase out, right? And then it'll eventually be kind of those others. And then from there, I think it might go to that level of completely no logic, or no logic, no emotions, no bias, none of that. It'll simply be logic and effectiveness. I think that have you ever seen the movie Lucy?
Yeah.
Right. So the first thing that went from her whenever she took the drug was her emotions. Completely gone. It was just about being effective. So I think the theory is that next evolutionary process that happens will be phasing that out completely. I think once that happens, we'll have more of a firm grasp on how we can use the world to bring the world together. I think the thing, though, in all reality, that's going to happen before that is we'll probably get ended by disease. We'll completely exhaust our natural resources, that sort of thing. Before anything else happens. I think virus. I think either the two biggest threats I think is either nanobots or virus. I think a virus is probably the most likely thing to eradicate the humanity.
I just want to point out a couple of things. The first one is you said something about viruses, right? Well, before then, there was lots of diseases, right, that wiped out entire civilizations.
Was there?
Yeah, the Black Plague, right?
It didn't wipe out an entire civilization, though. It didn't eradicate humanity.
Yeah. Humanity and civilization is like different things.
Explain.
So, back then, I probably have to say the majority of the virus was spread by probably ship, right? I'm talking about the Black Plague specifically right now. Because it's spread by ship and it's spread by land. And it wiped out the majority of the population in Europe back then, right? But it didn't completely kill everyone. And then I think about 2 centuries later, they were able to regain that population. Now, the difference between back then and now is the means to travel is so much easier.
Right.
That's why the coronavirus is all over the world, essentially, right?
I mean, yeah, but it's an airborne pathogen, meaning once it's here, it spreads via air. Not necessarily because of transportation, right? But it's not easily... so it's so easily transferable that, like, even if the means of transportation was still ship, like, it probably would have still affected about the same.
I disagree.
The only reason why I say that is because, well, first, I think it would have been worse, mainly because medicine wasn't as what it is today. So it would have been much, much worse. Second, well, actually, no. Because, well, I don't really know. I can't really speak on that behalf. But what I can speak on is that if trade, which was still big back then, right, the same way it is now, the same principles on trade were still a thing. And then not only that, you have to think about slavery, right, where the transportation of slaves, I think it would have easily spread just as fast, if not more, because, again, modern medicine, so, and because of how easily transferable it is, it's airborne, meaning anybody that breathes it in within proximity that is not in direct sunlight catches it, and they travel with it.
So what's your point?
That would travel just as easy. I'm saying that what your point is saying, that because transportation is so much easier, that it was easier for COVID to spread. And I'm saying that I think it would have affected it just.
I still definitely think that would have been the case because it was just ships, right? Obviously, it's going to affect the coast first before it spreads into the mainland, right? For all nations. So with planes, it's definitely going to affect bigger populations, but because of planes now, they're also affecting the middle of the nations too, like the states, obviously without any water surrounding it, right? So I do think it spreads faster because of planes, but back then, because of ships, I'm not going to say like it was impossible for other parts of the world to get infected. It was just much slower.
I mean, like, yeah, essentially, I mean, not, okay, so this is the thing. If one person had it on the ship, then the entire ship is likely to get infected because how easily COVID was spread, right? Then once it gets to that land, all those people that are now on that land spread it. It would have spread like wildfire. Think about this. Did you know what happened when COVID hit to the United States?
What?
So back in January, when President Trump first found out about this, he closed the borders.
Okay.
He's like, no travel from China at all. And then he was called like all kinds of names because he was like, nah, he didn't make it public that that's why he was doing it, but that's why he was doing it, right? Because all it would take was one person with it to come, and then it spreads like wildfire, right? So that's what I'm saying. I think that regardless of whether it be from ship or plane, that once it's in, it's in. Once there's one infected in the land because of how quickly... Have you ever played the game Plague on your phone? It's an app.
Explain.
Okay, so Plague, the game, it's an app. It simulates what would happen if a virus, and then you develop the virus, it can transform the virus, that sort of thing. But the reason why COVID was so like harsh was because it just took one person to come active with COVID. Then it spreads so fast that it makes it almost impossible.
Yeah, I think it's probably because it was, like you said, it's transferred by
air.
Not only is it airborne, but it's also, I would have to say it's not only because it's airborne, but it's probably because the means of travel is a lot easier. I really do think it.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'm sure that sped up the process, but I also think that if we're making the analogy from if COVID would have hit back then, it wouldn't have been as effective. Is that your premise?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying it's spreading a lot faster now. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to get at with the virus is back then, the Black Plague actually it spread pretty quick on land, but I'm saying that the means of travel was restricted because Christopher Columbus didn't even discover the other part of the world until 1492, and the Black Plague happened in the 1300s, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my point is the disease could not have spread to the other side of the world, which is the Native Americans. So my point with that is obviously it wouldn't have been able to spread. It's just stuck in Europe and killing people in Europe, right? But I'm saying because of the world today and how easy it is to fly and ships like can literally go anywhere now.
Yeah.
I'm saying the disease is much more likely to spread. I'm not saying the coronavirus is deadlier. I mean, it could be deadly if it were removed back then, but I'm saying like the means for disease to travel is a lot easier now than it was before then.
Yeah.
All right. The second thing I wanted to point out was your natural resource statement.
Yeah.
And I'm actually glad you brought that up because eventually the world's going to run out of natural resources. So the way for us to extremely get rid of this problem is to have people switch to like electric cars, have houses. I think, if I'm not mistaken, California is making people
solar
panels now, like having houses being made with solar panels. And obviously the earth itself is going to run out of trees. I really think that is a possibility because of how quickly we're cutting down trees and how many forest fires there are nowadays.
Specifically in California?
Not only in California, but this year the Amazon rainforest was massively on fire. I think if I'm not mistaken, like a third of it was completely wiped out. So I'm saying a lot. So my point is, trees are quickly going away. So either we develop a machine or something to replace that
oxygen.
Yeah, that CO2 and convert it to oxygen. to sustain the entire world. And what would be even better is to make it all solar powered, right? Make the machine solar powered, and then we'll be able to sustain ourselves for a longer period of time. Or we could, legit buy out an entire section of the world or a few sections of the world and just commit that part to just wildlife and trees and plants, just so that way it sustains the level of oxygen in the atmosphere. Those are just some of my thoughts. What do you think?
I mean, I think you're absolutely right, dude. Yeah, I mean, I think that there are solar panels still use electricity. Solar panels are still plugged into something. It's not just like, I'm not going to go too much into what I think because I have, my idea.
Yeah.
I think that solar panels is a temporary fix while more technology is being developed.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely slow the rate of natural resources being used up.
Definitely. So, man, I guess the question of the hour is, what should humanity's goal be?
The first thing, obviously, there are many avenues of approach,
right?
As always.
But what I'm saying is, like, if we talked about all the possibilities, we talked about different approaches. We took it. What do you think is what should? We'll say a realistic goal, like what we should do, and kind of a hope. Like if the world was a perfect place and we could just say this is how it's going to be, this is how we're going to do it. We'll talk about both of those. So first one, realistically, what should humanity's goal be?
All right. Realistically, I think everybody should be on the same page in terms of planet life, because I don't think people really understand how important the Earth is or what it really offers us, and we use it up and we beat it up a lot, actually. So in order for us to take care of the planet, I really do think the majority of the world needs to come together and get on the same page and discuss what environmental issues are the most damaging and get that fixed first, and then just go down the list. I think that's one of the things we could definitely work on, because
you think that's something that's possible?
I definitely think it's possible, but it's definitely really hard because every country in their own way is dealing with their own thing, and they don't necessarily want to make this a priority, but I definitely do think it's possible.
Okay. So in the best case scenario, what do you think it is?
What do you mean?
Okay, so I said we were going to list a realistic one, what we think could be possibly happen, and then we're going to talk about one that is best case scenario.
Best case scenario?
Like almost science fiction. It's so crazy that it's almost 100% chance that it's not going to happen. But if you could say it right now, that's James Nguyen, and be like, here's the gavel to the podium, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it just was, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no. Best case scenario, right, is get some kind of electronic device. So you know what? Create some kind of satellite that goes up into space, and then have everybody in the world take this one specific test that says, do you care about the world environment? Yes or no? And then
the people that say no just
and then are you serious about it or not?
Or not. That's what's going to come up on the test. It's going to be like, not. Are you serious or not?
Yeah, or not. And then it's just going to ask them a few series of questions, and if the answers are specifically no, I don't care about the environment, I don't care about people of the future, then the satellites just start shooting people down.
Dang. Okay, here's mine. Got you right here. You ready? Realistically, I think that probably what you said is probably like realistically the best case scenario. Not so realistically, a drug that comes out and allows us to evolve to the next species like in an instant.
Yeah.
And then we're all like, oh, you know what? We should probably stop the war and like come together as a humanity instead of fighting ourselves like savages.
Mm-hmm.
Because regardless of like, it's so crazy to think that like regardless of your race, like all the people around the world are still Homo sapiens. Like we're all the same species, every single one of us.
Yeah.
So like not the exact same DNA, but the same DNA structure. You know what I mean? Like we're all the same species, but we're here like murdering each other. I mean, think about how barbaric that is. If you think about a utopia with no war, and they all get along as civilization, and I think closing it up, right? One of these closing statements, I think it's so interesting because we're not the only species that does that. So it can't be that consciousness is the only reason why we're savages. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Lions do it. Apes do it. Dogs do it. we're not the only species that does that. So it can't, the line can't be drawn, oh, because we're conscious, we're savages. It has to be something deeper than that. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I think it's probably because a lot of humans, people nowadays, we've developed feelings instead of things that make sense.
No, it can't be that.
Oh, you don't think so?
No, that's what my statement just was. Consciousness is feelings. Being conscious is having feelings, having the ability to feel, to ask the question why. What I'm saying is that dogs are territorial, lions are territorial, they fight their own species for their territory. So it's not a conscious thing. It's not an emotional, it's not just an emotional thing. It has to go deeper than that.
So you're saying it could be instinct.
It has to be. It has to primal. It has to be primal. It has to be primal.
I think very little of it.
It has to be primitive.
I think a little bit of it has to do with primal instinct, but a lot of us nowadays obviously aren't going to just go and murder someone, and that takes a conscious effort to do so.
Right, but within our species, we're still deeply, deeply, deeply divided. And it didn't start, what I'm saying is like us as a species, the prior species, even back when we were Neanderthals, right? Like this isn't something that we developed with our consciousness. This was something that was already in place for us, right? To be territorial, to be violent, to, this is mine, not yours, and then fight to the death because of it. All right, this is something that was not developed with our cognition as we developed to Homo sapiens. I mean, with that being said, it's not just an emotional thing. It's not just I'm power hungry. I want control over everything. Unless that in itself is primitive, then yes.
Okay.
But that is something that we were not taught.
I mean, I don't know much about the topic. Like, I have no opinion of it. So we'll just leave it open.
Okay. We're running short on time tonight, guys. But I definitely want to hear your guys' opinion on this. If you guys, comment down in the comment section below. DM us, PM us, whatever you guys want. Just let us know what you think about the topic. And we'll definitely get back to you. Thank you to everyone who has reached out, by the way. You've contributed a lot.
Yeah, coming from me, I would definitely want to hear your guys' solution on how to bring the world together.
Oh, yeah.
And if not to come together, what do you think the goal of humanity is? If not to preserve the world for the betterment of multiple generations to come.
Yep.
I would definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts. This is something that I definitely think about on a regular basis because eventually I think the world is going to die out and we have to do something about it. Josiah, you got anything else to say?
Yeah, no, guys, definitely. Go follow us on our social medias. We have an IG, we have a Twitter, and we have Facebook. All the links are in the website. Give it a download, and if you like it, please share it, guys, just to get it out there. And we appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Peace.